You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio, man. We're here once again, and man, we have another show lined up for y'all today. Man, today we're going to be talking about all about coaching, man. So when it comes to just being your better self and trying to get to that next level, we got a perfect guest for y'all today. We're going to talk to Jessica Conoley, and she has an amazing website. She has amazing services. But, man, we're going to learn more about her story before we dive into the coaching that she does. And she's also a speaker as well. First and foremost, Jessica, I want to welcome you to the show and say how you doing.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to connect with your audience and just see where the interview takes us.
I appreciate you taking time to be on for the show today. So, man, first and foremost, I just want to say coaching is hot, man. It's a hot topic. It's a hot thing. I probably have a ton of guests who have done coaching, but you are in your own lane. So give us a little backstory. What inspired you to take this path to be a coach?
I fell into it. It was completely accidental and I had no intention and didn't even know what coaching was. So I first and foremost am a writer. I write science fiction and fantasy novels. And a few years ago on Twitter in the writing community, it was really popular to have mentor matches. And one of my agent siblings had suggested I apply to be a mentor for a match program. And so that's where younger authors are trying to get an agent. And then there's a mentor that helps them with their book and gets them ready to query and try and get into the industry. So I became a mentor and people applied to work with me. And I was only supposed to pick one person, but I knew that the real hard thing about creative industries is not the quality of our work. It's the mental stress that we have. And one of the best ways you can combat that is by building a really good support system. And so instead of picking one person, I emailed the top 3 choices and said, hey, will you let me run an experiment with you 3? And what I'll do is I will mentor all 3 of you for 4 months together, and we will see how far you get in your career. And so that's how my coaching inadvertently started. It was just, I wanted to give those people the best chance to succeed that I could. And then eventually it morphed into a full-time business, the Creative's Apprentice. And at the Creative's Apprentice, I help creatives simplify their lives, and I help them make the brain space to create, basically. And so the business side, I had always had a knack for, and my background was in corporate businesses. And then I ran a literary nonprofit, and I was the developmental editor and a managing editor of a magazine. So I understood the business side, but what was happening was at the Creative's Apprentice, my clients were meeting their business goals, but they were still super stressed out and they weren't necessarily enjoying things, even though they were getting book deals or, movie options, that type of stuff. They were still really stressed out. And that's when I realized, I can teach them how to business. I can help them achieve and coach through the business stuff. But if we're not being happy, I'm not doing my job right. And so I went out and I got certified as a life coach. And that led me to Positive Intelligence, where I'm through their coach training right now. And Positive Intelligence has been the key, the final trifecta that I needed, where I can teach people how to business, the craft, and then also the mental health aspect of it. So I did not set out to be a coach. It just turned out I had a knack for it, and I really enjoy it now that I'm here.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot involved. It's not like you just snap your fingers and poof, you are wearing this hat. So kind of for the audience, break down what the responsibilities are for a coach and what you kind of do day in, day out.
Sure. So my job as a coach is to help you clarify what your vision is for your life. And then once you know what you're headed towards, it's to empower you on how to get there. And the biggest thing I do is help people with mental chatter. So basically, there are some common thought patterns that people have that keep us paralyzed or in safe spaces. And the reason is our comfort zone is what we know. And so our brain wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us in our comfort zone. So we have a lot of internal judgment or avoidance or people-pleasing tendencies. There's like 10 different common thought patterns that'll keep you stuck. And what I do is I help you identify when you're talking to yourself in a way that's not constructive. And I help you build a muscle in your brain to transition out of that. So I do a lot of getting people really focused in their bodies. And then what we do is you pull out of that negative self-talk to get you back into action and on the path to where you want to go. So a lot of what I do one-on-one coaching is just talking, a lot like what we're doing right now. And then also, as the business coach, I'll provide resources to people and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or possibly connections to hook them up in different ways, depending on where they're going in their career.
You listen on Refocus Radio, talking to Jessica Conoley. And when you mentioned earlier about moving forward from your corporate gig, take us back to that point. What was it for you that determined it was a green light for you to go ahead and make that jump?
Yeah. So I started working when I was 14 and I did a work release in high school. So I started working in corporate environments when I was 16 and I was in corporate solidly after that. And I do have a pretty active imagination and everything. Corporate wasn't a good fit for me emotionally. And then when I turned 30, I realized if I stayed in that environment, I was going to break, and something that was just innately Jessica was going to die because there was just no room for self-expression or thinking outside the box or anything. And so I realized when I was turning 30 that I needed to find an escape route. And so I looked around the people who were around me who were happy in their careers. And I had a friend who was a computer coder, and that was not like as familiar as it is now. And so I was like, how did you even know you wanted to do that? Because coding wasn't taught in school or anything when I was growing up. And she's like, oh, I went to a research institute and I took some tests. And I said, okay, I want to take those tests. And so I drove to Texas. I live in Kansas City. So I drove all day to Texas to the Johnson O'Connor Research Institute. And for 2 days, I took all of these really odd tests. One of them was like, it looked like all these colors of eyeshadow and you were supposed to put them in order. Sometimes you would write really, really fast. One of them, you got like poker chips with words on them. And then there were placemats and you were supposed to put them in different orders. So for 2 days, I did all these super strange tests and they came back and they said you would either be really good at disaster management or writing. And I had actually already done some disaster work in my corporate stuff. And like, when you work disaster, you go to places where there's no power and you get glow sticks to check in at the hotel because you don't have power in your room. And I was like, I'm 30, I'm getting old, I'm out of this game. So I looked at writing and came back to Kansas City. I was still working full time. And I met with a career counselor and she hooked me up with the writing community in Kansas City. And so for 5 years, I was working full time still at my corporate job. And I was slowly building my writing resume. That's when I took over a literary nonprofit. And that's when I was also managing editor of a magazine. So I was doing all of this concurrently. And one day I was driving home from my corporate job and something had happened with a case I was working on. And it felt very, I'll just say it felt unethical to me. Like, and I couldn't do what my direct boss had told me to do. And I didn't do it, knowing that I would have had the support of his boss. But I was in the car on the way home. And at this point in time, I really did not process emotions at all. And I just started bawling in the car. And I was like, well, this is weird because I didn't cry then. And it was this moment where I was like, wow, it's not a matter of me wanting to leave anymore. It's a matter of me needing to leave because if I stay and play by the rules that they're asking for, I have lost the essence of Jessica. So I left and I thought it was just going to be take a summer off, which I'd never taken a summer off in my life. I'd been working since I was 14. Like the longest I'd ever taken off was 2 weeks maybe. And I was like, I'll just take the summer off and kind of regroup and stuff. And then I just never went back, and I ended up starting an editing business. And then ultimately I morphed into the Creative's Apprentice. So that is my escape from corporate story for you.
Man, again, it sounds like a lot took place. It's not like you just jumped and said, yeah, I'm going to just dive off and hopefully this parachute works. Now, when you made that decision to make that jump, it was still risky, even though you kind of had a well thought out process of like, okay, weigh the scales. It's just bad timing. It's just good timing. You had a point. You was reaching a point where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this. How was it in the beginning? Everyone's nightmare is like, is it going to work? So for you, what was it like? What were some of the things you had to learn from the beginning to kind of adjust your new lifestyle?
Yeah, there was so much to learn at first. And most of what I worked on was actually unlearning. So when you transition from a corporate or like a 9-to-5 job to having complete and total freedom, especially if you grew up like in a US school system, we are not trained for freedom. We are trained to be productive all the time and to fill our time up and everything. And so what I found was that first summer where I was like, yes, I'm going to have all this freedom, I just fell into old patterns of like, well, I need to accomplish things. I need to get things done, take on more roles for other people, do stuff, because that was the mode that I had operated in for so long. And especially for people who are pursuing creative careers, that is a very dangerous space to stay in, of just busy, 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 go, go, go. Because creative ideas, well, all ideas need space and they need rest and they need time. So even though like you may actively be working on a writing project, you're going to get stuck in it, and your brain actually needs that processing time. And that's why so many people are like, oh, I got the best idea when I was in the shower, or I was doing the dishes or whatever. It's because our brains need the downtime. And so most of what I worked on, and it took me probably 4 years before I really understood how to work from home. And what I had to learn was that building free time and downtime into my day was part of it. So I quit my job in 2015 and I went to a writer's retreat in 2017. And at the writer's retreat, I was like, okay, I'll try whatever they tell me. And they were like, we're going to have you meditate. And I just like rolled my eyes and I was like, oh, of course, like this is going to be some weird hippie meditation thing. But they told me it would make my writing better. And I was like, okay, I said I'd try whatever. Well, what really helped in that retreat was the teacher, who was also a writer, said, when you are creating something, you are just continually refocusing your attention back to that project. So if you're writing and you're working on a story, what you need to do is continually refocus and refocus and refocus. Like no matter what's happening, you just keep bringing your attention back to the story. And she said, meditation is just practicing that refocusing. And the better you get at refocusing, the better you get at creating, because you can get back to your story faster. You can get back to it faster. When she explained it like that, I was like, I totally understand how this is going to help me, and I'm all in. So I started meditating in 2017 as a means to get more efficient at my writing, I guess. But what I found is through meditation, I also found that same sort of space and free zone in my brain. And that really opened me up to whole new ways of looking at how I did things and reorganizing my life and just changing the entire pattern of how I created existence, which ultimately led me to the things that I teach today in the Creative's Apprentice for people building creative lifestyles and creative careers and transitioning out of corporate.
And everything you talk about with meditation, if only drivers would meditate a little bit more, maybe we can have better drivers in this United States. But It's funny because I feel like that's just, I said this on my last show. I heard someone talk about like, no matter what we like set out to do in life, like this person's perspective was we'll always be taking 3 steps forward, but, a couple more steps backward because that's the reality of our culture.
Yeah.
Like America, like, like we're just notorious. Like, oh yeah, new year, new me. But this, give it like a few days and before you know it, the old habit guy just comes out of nowhere and hits you. And then you sit down for the rest of the year. How do you keep yourself consistent? Because as a coach, is there more pressure for you to like practice what you preach as you're coaching others? Or do you have a system?
Yes, there's a huge practice what I preach component, especially because for my business, one of the main tenets of working in the business is you have to actively be creating on your own projects. So I won't partner with anybody or bring on any employees unless they're actively creating on their own projects, because I think first and foremost, we have a duty and obligation to ourselves in those projects. And so I can't very well tell my employees like, hey, you have to work on your own stuff and then not be doing it myself. And I actually had a very hard time with that over the past 2 years because my mom was dying of cancer. And so my world was just completely reorganized and turned upside down while that was happening. But because I own my own business and I have my own creative, like I am in charge of my life, I could put things on hold and stop and spend time with her and take care of her. And so I have no regrets about what I did then. But after she passed away, it was time for me to get back to writing. And it was just hard because I was out of practice. I hadn't, I'd just been in this whole different world for so long. And so I decided I was going to lean into what I call my accountability support triangle. And there's three aspects to your accountability support. And you're going to have mentorship, you're going to have critique and craft support, or you're going to have actual accountability. And what I needed then was accountability. And so I turned to social media, which I'm not a huge social media person. But what I knew was that if I publicly said out loud on a channel that I was going to write every day, I would feel an obligation to the people who were on that channel to fulfill that goal. And so I went on Instagram and I said, I'm going to put a sticker on my sticker chart, which is just a calendar. And then I put a sticker up and I was like, every day I get a sticker. And then I'm just going to take a picture and put it up there and show you guys. So I did that. And it allowed me to write a really great article that I put up on over at Jane Friedman's blog. But what I didn't realize is as I was doing that, how many people were watching me and how much that brought them on board. It made them feel like they were part of this journey of me creating something. But then it also inspired them to go out and do their own thing. And I didn't realize before, because I've done sticker charts like for years. Like I just love stickers. So like I've done it for forever, but I'd never shared it before. And I was on a coaching call last week and the lady said, I just love when you put your stickers up. She said, because it shows me that you're out there and you're doing it. And it's not this overnight success thing. It's this, I slowly work on it every day thing. And the other thing that was great about that process was I missed a day in there. And I missed the day because something had happened and grief was just triggered. And I was just bawling on the couch. And I don't remember specifically what happened, but it was just a heavy grief day. So I stopped. But at the end of the day, I took a picture and there was no sticker up there. And what I did was in the caption, I said, there's no sticker today because I had to take care of myself. And it was a really hard day because I lost mom. But, taking care of ourselves is the most important thing because we have to take care of ourselves or we can't create our art. So in my failure of not writing, I was still showing people that that's part of the job too, of being kind to yourself, of getting back when you're ready to get back, of, not pressuring yourself when you shouldn't pressure yourself. So yes, I feel a huge obligation to practice what I preach. And I don't do it perfectly, but I do it consistently. And I do it in a way to show others that it's possible to be done.
You're listening to I'm Refocused Radio, talking to Jessica Conoley. You can go to her website, jessicaconnolly.com. And yeah, I mean, that goes back to the funny joke I said about if people meditate more, then traffic won't be as bad. But to your point, when traffic is bad, using it as a metaphor, it's how we, you know, adjust to that situation. Because one, you're not going to make traffic clear, especially in LA. Two, you just got to deal with it because when you get to your destination, you get there. Because it goes back to point number one. You're not going to make it go faster. So sometimes I think we just got to see the reality of the situation and say, okay, I can't skip these steps. I have to find out the solution for this situation. For you, I'm sure you're getting really great at what you're doing, but how in the beginning were you learning how to create those systems to keep you growing in the right direction that you wanted to grow in?
So much trial and error. So much trial and error. So I'm a reader, like I've always been a reader, and I happen to find behavioral economics and habit formation and happiness and all that stuff very interesting, and I like the science of it. But in the writing community, one thing that's very common is this, I would say, misbelief that to be a real writer, you have to write every day. And so when I first left corporate, I was like, I'm going to write every single day, no matter what. I'm going to be a real writer. Yeah. But what I found was that when I did do that, it forced me into a way of working that was not authentic to me. And I found that my work actually needs space sometimes. So I typically write Monday through Friday, and then I give myself the weekends off. But by trying to force myself into what everybody else said was right, I was actually learning that that wasn't right for me. And so what I recommend to people is to look at everything that's happening around you and try it all on. It's like finding your style. You don't, in your 20s, you're still trying to figure out like what looks best on you or the haircut or the style or whatever. It's the same way with work habits. And so you just ask everybody what they do. If it's mildly curious or interesting or entertaining to you, go ahead and try it out. But you're just trying it out. It's an appetizer. It's not like the main course that you're going to be eating for the rest of your life. So try everything out, see what works best for you, and then move on. And what I've found for me is, because I work from home and I have full reign over my schedule, planning my weeks in advance and then planning my days each morning is really helpful for me. And I actually do that on pen and paper and a journal planner. I use a planner called the Best Self Journal, and it gives you a way to map out your day. The reason I do it on paper is it activates a different part of my brain than computer work. And it also, I spend so much time staring at a computer screen that it's just really nice for me to look at something that's tangible and not on a screen. That's the same reason I read books in real life whenever I can too. And so looking at my day, and the other thing that I do is I don't give myself an impossible to-do list. I have 3 main goals for each day. Like today, the interview was one, and my goal was to just be fully present and active and give you the content that your audience would resonate with. And so that was one of my goals for the day. I had a coaching call today, so that was another one, and then some writing. So those are my things, and I'm not going to give myself an infinity list because that sets myself up for failure. And if you set yourself up for failure day after day after day, you lose momentum. And there's something I call achievement momentum about setting a realistic amount of goals or a realistic set of tasks for yourself. And as you complete that and you keep promises to yourself that I am going to keep these things going every day, you build confidence in yourself. And then you also build energetic energy that can propel you into a task that maybe you're overwhelmed to start or that feels too big and too unmanageable, but you're riding this good wave of look at what I've done. I can totally get this done. But my biggest recommendation for work habits is look at what everyone else is doing. Try it for a week or two. If it doesn't completely rock your face off, don't do it. Because if you're creating your own life, the things that you do should come naturally to you and take you in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes people can feel like, hey, if I pick up this basketball and go to the gym and play, for 2 hours, I'll be the next LeBron or Steph Curry or, some other great name out there in the NBA. And it's important to realize, no, you're going to be the next best you.
Exactly.
And I want you to touch on that because we're in a new year. I purposely have not set a resolution. I don't believe in those anymore, just like I don't believe in Santa Claus. Sorry. Hopefully parents out there, don't let anyone hear this podcast if they believe in Santa Claus. But my point is, it's like at some point you got to stop believing the fairy tale and start believing in your ability to do what's necessary for you to get to that better version of yourself, and not try to be like, oh, I got to be the next, Bill Gates, I got to be a billionaire. Like, man, who can live up to that pressure?
Yeah. I was actually talking to a class of fifth graders once, and they were, raising their little hands, and they asked, do you want to be the next J.K. Rowling? And I said, no, I want to be Jessica Conoley, and I want to be the best Jessica Conoley I can be. And that's all I want, And they looked at me and I was like, every single one of you has some sort of gift, whether it's you are amazing with dogs, or you're amazing at art, or maybe you're like a super good baker. Every single one of you has something that you're interested in and that you can do better than anybody else. And you're going to know it's the right thing, because when you do it, you can just spend hours doing it, and you can talk about it to your friends and just get so excited about everything. And when you follow that, it's going to keep bringing out something in you that just makes you better and better and better. So follow that excitement and follow it. And it's going to take you to places you never knew and you never expected. And that's what I love about the work I do, is like, I never thought I would end up being a coach, but because I was following my curiosity and I was seeing where I connected with people and what brought out better qualities in me and helped me be more of the type of person I wanted to be, I ended up where I am. And I think it only gets better and better when you keep following that type of energy and curiosity.
You're listening to Refocus Radio, talking to Jessica Conoley, and go to her website, jessicaconoley.com. And man, yeah, today's feel like I was in a coaching session. So hopefully that feels like the same with our audience. And on a serious note, this is, like I said, a new year I would say it's a new year for new opportunity. I think that's true. But for you, what would you say to listeners who are seriously considering to challenge themselves to become the next better version of themselves this year and grow into that?
I think the best thing you can do for yourself is look at how you talk to yourself. If you wouldn't talk to your best friend that way, then most of us are a lot meaner in our heads to ourselves than we are to strangers or to our best friend or to anyone else. Then it's time to really look at how you talk to yourself and give yourself some patience and grace and kindness. And if you want help looking at that and identifying that, that's one of the things I do. And when I changed how I talk to myself and I quit beating myself up for not, writing every day or not meeting some unattainable goal, the entire universe shifted for me and things started flowing in a way I'd never understood they could before. And the first step is to start changing the words that we tell ourselves, because ultimately that'll change your thoughts, which is going to change your beliefs, which is going to change your feelings. So you're not going to feel different until 4 steps in. So you start with the words, and then ultimately your actions are going to change. But start by looking at how you're talking to yourself, because when you change that, your whole life changes.
Someone should start a reality show of people inside their own head. I think that would be amazing. It probably wouldn't be a commercial break.
Agreed.
So, yeah, once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to Jessica Conoley. You can go to her website, jessicaconoley.com. What's the call to action that you would want our listeners to take after they finish with this episode?
Yeah, if you want to know more about how to talk to those voices in your head, I would love to give you a free coaching session. Just go to jessicaconoley.com. There's a coaching tab and you book a free session down at the bottom. I love getting to meet new people, and I'll walk you through a couple of things, and we can even do a fun, like if you like personality tests, we can do that too and see where it takes you.
Once again, I want to say thanks to Jessica Conoley for taking time in your schedule talking to I Am Refocused Radio today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.